Hello and welcome back. Today we look at some unsolved cases. If you have any information, please contact Crime Stoppers. All their information will be in the description. But let's head straight into the cases. First, we start off with Vicky Glass. She was born on the 21st of September 1979 to her parents Deborah and Anthony. She had a sister Claire who was a year older than her. Her parents split up and her mother Deborah remarried. Vicky gained another older sister and a younger brother. She loved music, she was part of a jazz band and she enjoyed performing with them. She was a quiet girl, but those who knew her described her as bubbly and having a heart of gold. As she grew older, she got more confident and more social, but unfortunately, she got addicted to a substance at the age of 18. To afford the substance, she became a lady of the night and would work quite often at the Cannon Park area of Middlesbrough, where lorries would park overnight. By Christmas 1999, Vicky's life had spiralled. She was homeless and was still using substances. She was unwell with a chest infection, so her friend introduced her to a gentleman who would allow her to live in his home. Although she now had somewhere to stay, she still worked as a lady of the night to fund her habit. It was her 21st birthday in September 2000 and she celebrated this and then worked as a lady of the night as usual in Cannon Park and other areas of Middlesbrough. That same week, on Saturday the 23rd of September 2000, Vicky and a friend left 16 Petch Close where she was staying at around lunchtime. Vicky wanted to change her clothes and then she went back to the usual areas she worked. Sometime after midnight, Vicky met a client on Borough Road in Middlesbrough. Both Vicky and this male then went to 104 Princes Road, which is an address well known to substance users and ladies of the night. After staying in the address for a period of time, Vicky and the male left. They flagged a taxi down on Union Street and went back to the male's home in Norton. It's known that Vicky only stayed at the house for a short time. Shortly before 4 a.m. on Sunday the 24th of September 2000, Vicky left the client's house in Norton and got a taxi. Vicky got out of the taxi on Union Street at around 4:20 a.m. The taxi driver then drove back to the firm's office, which was on Borough Road in Middlesbrough. In the days after this, the male that took Vicky in at Petch Close began to make inquiries into the whereabouts of Vicky, as he hadn't seen her. He contacted her close friends and visited locations that she would work, but no one had seen her. He spoke to Cleveland police about Vicky being missing and an investigation was launched. At 6 a.m. on Friday the 3rd of November 2000, Vicky was discovered by a dog walker in a village in North Yorkshire. The investigation turned from a missing person to a murder investigation. Her friend spoke with police and told them that Vicky had a conversation with a lorry driver and left some belongings with him, agreeing to meet him later. Officers are keen to speak to this lorry driver. He was described as white, aged in his mid-30s, with a broad build and a distinctive mole on his face. CCTV showed Vicky wearing light-coloured trousers, a light-coloured top, white trainers and a dark-coloured puffer-style jacket. 4 people were arrested in connection with Vicky Glass's murder since 2000, but all 4 were released without charge. On Friday, the 24th of September 2021, it was announced that detectives are to reinvestigate the murder of Vicky Glass after a review of the case found significant new lines of inquiry. This case has been reviewed by the Historical Investigation Unit and a newly formed team led by Detective Chief Inspector Peter Carr. He said he will actively reinvestigate her death using new forensic techniques, speaking to potential witnesses and looking at over 2,000 hours of CCTV footage from the time of her disappearance. Vicky's family made a statement and said, "Vicky was loved deeply by us, and as a family we have been through turmoil, especially as Ma'am Deborah passed away without any answers. Knowing Vicky's killer is out there and people have information that they are not coming forward with. Please do the right thing and help get justice for Vicky and give our family some hope." At this current moment, Vicky Glass's case still remains cold. Next we look at the cold case of Stuart Lubbock, and you may know this case as it involves Michael Barrymore. Stuart was born on the 1st of October 1969. He worked at a meat factory and lived with his father Terry and brother Kevin in a house in Harlow, Essex. Stuart had 2 daughters aged 4 and 1 who were being brought up by his former wife, who he had left a few months earlier. He met TV personality Michael Barrymore in the Millennium nightclub on the night of the 30th of March 2001. He was in the club with his brother and Michael Barrymore was with his friend. Stuart went back to the house with 9 other people in Roydon at around 2:35 a.m. The other people who were present at the bungalow were Michael Barrymore, Justin Merritt, Jonathan Kenny, who was Barrymore's boyfriend, Merritt's younger sister Kylie, a chef named James Futer, Simon Shaw, who was James's friend, Claire Jones 17 and Kelly Campbell. Claire and Kelly also met Barrymore at the club too. A taxi driver who dropped off Barrymore said that when they arrived at his bungalow, he said, "I could do with a right now." A witness at the party said people took off their clothes and jumped in the jacuzzi, and this included Stuart, who then jumped into the swimming pool. A real issue with this case is witnesses at the party. Their statements just don't align with each other, as well as the police investigation being completely bodged. The exact time that Stuart was found is quite uncertain, but most reports state at around 5 a.m. and others state between 4:30 and 5:45. An ambulance was called at 5:48 a.m. on the 31st of March 2001. The ambulance arrived at 5:56 a.m. They found Stuart unconscious by the side of the pool. He was taken to the Princess Alexandra Hospital in Harlow, where he was treated, but unfortunately he passed away at 8:23 a.m. It said that Barrymore and 2 friends found Stuart unresponsive and had no idea what happened. Barrymore then panicked and shouted at his friend to revive him. It took 45 minutes for anyone at the bungalow to call the police. Barrymore, in this time, had called his agent and told him what was happening before anyone called an ambulance or police. Barrymore panicked and fled the scene before paramedics arrived. Of course, an investigation was then opened. Barrymore said he gave Stuart no substances or drinks. He showed the guests around the house and let them do as they pleased. He went inside his house and was showing others his new extension. Kylie, someone else who was at the party, told police that she saw Barrymore rubbing a substance on Stuart's gums. James also said that Barrymore had showed him a white substance, but Barrymore denied all of this. Police didn't even secure the scene at the time. Barrymore's agent entered the crime scene and was tidying up items and cleaning the bungalow. It was revealed that the pathologist confirmed that he had consistent injuries of an SA, as well as marks across his head. 3 pathologists indicated that he hadn't passed away in the pool and maybe was placed there. Barrymore said that he had passed away in the pool and it was an accident. The lead pathologist, Dr. Heath, still concluded that it was an accident. It also found that Stuart had traces of substances and alcohol in his system. Dr. Heath, the main pathologist, was actually investigated and stood down from his job after it was recorded that he came to the conclusions very differently to various other pathologists in a lot of other cases. The inquest was recorded as an open verdict and no one was charged. In 2007, the IPCC report stated that some of the witnesses at the party had given conflicting accounts of what had happened. The report stated that the police thought that Stuart passed away outside of the swimming pool and that he did not swim in the pool as it was claimed by some of the other people at the party, and he was placed in the pool. It was all staged. On the 14th of June 2007, the Essex police arrested Barrymore and 2 other men on suspicion of the murder of Stuart and serious SA. Barrymore was held for questioning and the police were given permission to hold him for another 12 hours, but he was released the next day on bail. He was then said that he would not have any charges made against him. He denied everything. Essex police also noticed that evidence was missing at the crime scene, a pool thermometer and a door handle, which the police assume may have been used in the SA. It was stated that the thermometer and the door handle were photographed at the scene, but they were removed, and this wasn't by the police for examination. Stuart's family made many complaints on how the police conducted their investigation, especially that the crime scene wasn't closed and the bungalow was cleaned by Barrymore's agent, who was allowed just to walk around it. In 2017, Barrymore sued Essex police for wrongful arrest. He said that his whole career was ruined. He later dropped this claim. On the 4th of February 2020, Essex police offered a £20,000 reward for information leading to a conviction. The cash reward was funded by Essex police and the charity CRIMESTOPPERS, which was in response to a Channel 4 documentary on the incident, The Body in the Pool, which aired on the 6th of February 2020. On the 17th of March 2021, Essex police confirmed that they had arrested a 50-year-old man from Cheshire in connection with an assault and murder of Stuart as a result of the appeal, and was preparing to submit a file to the Crown prosecution. Essex police officer Lucy Morris stated, 9 people were at that party. We know that not everyone was responsible for what happened, but someone was. Now is the time to come forward, if you haven't done so already, to set this matter to rest by providing us with any information you have. She emphasised that the police have never given up on this case and the investigations were complex. The case remains cold, and sadly Stuart's father Terry, who campaigned so strongly, passed away. Detective Inspector Jennings said, Terry's devotion to his son and to his pursuit of justice knew no bounds. He was an example to many of us in his relentless quest for the truth and justice. Our investigation into Stuart's death will not end with Terry's. As long as the case remains open, we will do all we can to deliver justice for him and his family. For this to end, we urge anyone who has information about Stuart's death to please now more than ever do the right thing and come forward. Stuart's case remains cold. The next cold case we look at is that of Lorraine Turner, who was 37 years old and a mum of 2. She had a daughter and a son. She had previously been a journalist for the Eastern Counties newspaper and a press officer at a city football club. She was briefly married to BBC producer Ian Jolly in the mid-1980s, but had 2 children with her former partner Steve Rocastle. Unfortunately, her children, her son Jordan, who was 10, and her daughter Jasmine, 8, found her with her life taken on the 17th of August 2002 at their home on Desmond Drive in Norwich. Her post-mortem showed that she had passed away from head injuries. She was last seen alive on Tuesday the 13th of August 2002. A 21-year-old man was charged and was remanded in custody. He was a roofer called Lee Allen Cook. He never went to trial and his case fell apart. The police left the case open, and in 2023 her 2 children appealed for information. They said they had been haunted by the discovery ever since. They made a statement saying, "The hardest part is there's no closure. I do not know why or who, but someone does, and I would appeal to anyone whose loyalties may have changed over the years to come forward. Our mother is not coming back, and making this appeal may be one of the very last things me and Jordan are able to do for her." She described her mother, Lorraine, as someone who lived quietly with a small circle of friends. They ended the statement by saying, "I want to appeal to anyone who has been keeping a secret for 21 years. This is a time to get rid of your guilt and clear your conscience. There are 4 children who do not have their grandmother, and the story that comes with that loss is so brutal. It's a huge burden, but we will never give up fighting for her." The case still remains cold, but police said that it has received 2 calls off the back of their appeal, with officers continuing to work through them. Next we look at Alistair Wilson, who was born in 1974. By 30, he was a banker who had done very well for himself. He lived in a house in Crescent Road in Scotland with his wife Veronica and 2 young children, while Veronica's father lived in the top floor flat. At around 7 p.m. on the 28th of November 2004, the doorbell of the Wilsons' house was rung and Veronica answered the door. An unidentified man wearing a baseball cap, dark blue jacket and dark jeans stood on the doorstep. He asked for Alistair Wilson by name and Wilson went to speak to him. A few minutes later he returned to his wife carrying an empty blue envelope with the name Paul on the front. Confused, he went back to the door, at which point Veronica Wilson heard 3 shots. She went to the door and discovered that her husband had his life taken. He passed away in hospital later that evening. The unidentified man was stocky, clean-shaven, aged 20 to 40, between 5'4" and 5'7". In 2017, it was revealed that the envelope had been a blue greeting card style envelope with the word Paul written on it, and that it was actually empty. His wife heard none of the conversation as she went back inside the house. In April 2022, the police said they thought that the most likely motive behind him losing his life was a planning dispute, as he had objected to a large decking area outside a hotel opposite his house shortly before his life was taken. It was heard that Alistair Wilson had said that the decking was the cause of noise and litter problems. Police found that Alistair had lodged a written objection with Highland Council, and a copy of this objection was sent to the hotel 2 days before he lost his life. They also found that this objection to the planning permission was openly talked about in the hotel and pub. In September 2022, the police said they were looking to trace a new person in connection with this crime that had been a regular drinker at the Havelock Hotel around the time of the crime. In June 2023, it was reported that a main suspect had since been convicted of an unrelated substance offence and sent to prison. In September 2024, the police announced that they were ordering a complete reinvestigation of the crime. At the moment, the case remains cold. Now we look at the case of June Thrussell, and unfortunately there's really not a lot of information. She was 56 years old and she lived on her own in Chadwell Heath in London. She separated from her husband in the 80s and dated a few men, but nothing too serious. She had a consistent routine. She worked as a secretary at an insurance firm in Valentine House. She would leave work at 5 p.m. and then get the train to Chadwell Heath, but on Tuesday the 14th of June 2005 this would be the last time she took this route. On Friday, June 17th, a concerned work colleague called the police and reported that June hadn't showed up for work for several days and wasn't answering any phone calls. Officers entered her home and found her with her life taken. There was nothing taken from her property and no signs of SA. This led them to question her ex-husband and boyfriends, but the police had nothing to go by and all men were cleared. A man named Gary Allen was arrested. He had been imprisoned in 1976 for attacking his neighbour, 36-year-old Anne Rosenwald, but had been released on probation in 1992. He had also been involved in a domestic violence incident in 2001. Allen did stand trial for taking the life of June, but was ultimately found not guilty. Despite this acquittal, the parole board chose to revoke his probation and return him to prison, arguing that he had shown a willingness to commit violence and that much more was known about his activities than had been known in 1976, demonstrating that he was a risk to the public. By what I've read, it's believed that they do think Gary Allen was the person who took June's life, considering he'd already taken another lady's life in similar circumstances. But her case still remains unsolved. The next case we look at is Newton Thompson, who was 61 years old and from Melbourne, Australia. He had been on a 6-week tour of Europe. He had stayed in a hotel the week before until the 28th of July. He then went to visit York and Scotland. He returned on Monday afternoon on the 31st of July 2005 and checked back into the Comfort Inn in Craven Hill. He was found with his life taken the next day on Tuesday the 1st of August 2005. He had been seen earlier in the day by bar staff at around 9:15 p.m. and also seen later on CCTV. This is believed to be a case of mistaken identity. While Robert Exell was extradited from Australia and arrived back in the UK just 2 days before. He had served 39 years behind bars in Australia for offences against young boys. He had landed at Heathrow Airport on the 30th of July. Children's campaigners had expressed fears that he was forced to sign a register when he landed might re-offend in Britain. Guests told police they heard a struggle that night. A police spokeswoman said, One line of inquiry is a case of mistaken identity. At this moment, we don't have a motive for this murder. Currently, his case remains cold. Now we look at the case of Dean Tully, who was 37 years old. On the 25th of January 2007, Dean was at a flat, Fraser House, down Green Dragon Lane in Brentford, West London. This flat was said to be frequented by those who use substances. Two men wearing masks burst into the flat at 9:22 p.m. There were around 10 people in the flat at the time, and it was thought that Dean Tully was not targeted as they sprayed the firearms around the room for around 3 minutes. After committing the crime, the two men fled down Green Dragon Lane. CCTV did capture this, but it was very low quality. Dean passed away at the scene. 4 men were questioned over the crime, but no charges were made. Police said they thought that the shooting was related to gang warfare between 2 substance gangs on the Haverfield estate. The flat was being used to deal Class A substances by drug dealers that were new to the area and were moving in on the territory of already existing gangs. There had been an earlier fight between the 2 gangs that had resulted in the original substance gang being alienated from the estate. Police said they found a boot mark in the flat. The weapon was found later in an old woman's bin in December 2007 after being dumped there by some men that had been seen waving it around a nightclub. The older woman who found it had handed it in to the police. However, the police said they could not find any connection between the men that had the gun in the nightclub and the crime. The police said, "There is nothing in Dean's background that would lead us to believe he might have been deliberately killed. It seems he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time." The police went on to arrest a 23-year-old man in connection with the investigation. He was bailed and he returned to West London. A second man, who was 37 years old, was also arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to murder. He was also bailed. The police officers have offered a reward of $20,000 for information leading to an arrest. Both men never went to trial and the case fell apart. His case still remains cold. Now we look at the case of Sarah Melia, who had her life taken on Catherine Street in Urhie on the 14th of January 2008 at her home. It was a very violent attack and she was found by a 34-year-old daughter. The weapon used was found on the roof of an extension at her home. Her brother was the main suspect. Sarah's brother, Mark Kitchen, was later arrested, and it was noted that he suffered from schizophrenia. It was alleged he was the man shown on CCTV footage, which the police said was linked with the incident. The prosecution in the case claimed Mr. Kitchen had visited his sister at her home in Catherine Street on January 14, 2008 and carried out the crime. Mr. Kitchen was then living in Richard Gwynn Close, and he always denied the murder. He initially went on trial in December 2008, but proceedings were halted after 5 days when the prosecution called a witness whose evidence conflicted with their case, and issues were raised with CCTV footage offered as evidence. He went on trial for a second time in March 2008. This hearing also collapsed when, in a twist, it was revealed that a juror, a serving police officer, knew the leading detective in the case, Detective Superintendent Ian Foster, on a first-name basis, and had been involved in shared correspondence about the defendants 13 months earlier. Problems with the second trial started after the jury had been sent out to deliberate. They were called back and asked if they had any knowledge of those involved in the case or its background. The juror said that as a police officer he knew of the detective but did not know him personally, but this later turned out to be false. The 2 failed trials cost the taxpayers around $95,000, and Mr. Kitchen was found not guilty. No one else has ever been charged with her murder, and it remains cold. Ashley Dighton was 19 years old when he was last seen on the 11th of June 2007 at a supermarket in Ashford in Kent. Ashley had lived in 9 Acres. He was last seen by his father when he stopped him briefly to change his clothes. After leaving his home in 9 Acres, he had gone to stay at his sister's, where he'd stayed on the night of the 10th of June 2007. His sister said that the next morning they had gone with her partner and a friend to the town centre, where they bought a bottle of alcohol, and then later at Lidl's they got another bottle of alcohol. They then went to Sainsbury's, where Ashley's sister's ex-partner got some beer. She said that Ashley went to get another crate but didn't have enough money and put it back. His sister said that Ashley then left the supermarket and that was the last time she saw him. She said that although he had been drinking, she wasn't worried about him, and said that he thought he would go home to their fathers or to his girlfriends. One of the friends said that they had been drinking vodka that day and admitted that Ashley was very drunk. Ashley's sister said she thought that he had been murdered after being drawn into substance dealing. He was watched by a security guard as he walked off down a footpath whilst very drunk and drinking from the bottle. He was found a month later near the store in some bushes covered with branches. His head has never been found. His inquest in 2008 heard that one of his ribs and his t-shirt had been removed and put into a carrier bag, which was found about 100 yards away from his body. His shoes were also found in another area. He had been there for such a long time, the pathologist could not determine his cause of death, and an open verdict was returned at the inquest. A further factor that limited the pathologist's ability to determine the cause was because his head had never been found. Police said that they thought that he had his life taken in the woods behind the store where he was found. They spent 3 weeks searching the woods for clues, a detective said. However, Ashley came to die. There's been definite attempts to hide his body, removing his clothes when the body was in an advanced state. That's really unusual. In 2022, a new appeal was made by his family, but as of today, there has been no new leads. And now we look at the case of Rita Ellis, who was born on the 10th of October 1948 in Stevenage. She joined the WRAF on the 28th of April 1967. She did her basic training and then ended up working in the kitchens of the Princess Mary Royal Air Force Hospital Catering Department on the camp at RAF Halton in Buckinghamshire. On the night of the 11th of November 1967, she was due to babysit for Wing Commander Roy Watson and his wife. Steve Tank, an RAF apprentice, and his nurse girlfriend Liz escorted her to the front of the WRAF Women's Housing Block at 7:25 p.m, leaving her there to go on her date. Wing Commander Watson arrived at the block at 7:40 p.m. to pick Rita up, but she was not there. He waited for 15 minutes before leaving and coming back 10 minutes later with his wife, who could, under the RAF rules at the time, enter the all-female block. Rita was not in the block. It was reported sometime later that the police believe she got into the car of the person she thought was Commander Watson because she had never met him before and maybe would have been too shy to question the identity. Rita was last seen alive at 8 p.m. on the 11th of November, but as there were 2 public functions on at the camp that night, a disco and a bingo, there were hundreds of civilians and military personnel on the base. Rita was found the next day on the 12th of November with her life taken. It was in a woodland on the western edge of the camp where a disused railway line was used to bring supplies into the camp. She had been essayed and it was very violent. Police did question a local scrap dealer about the murder, but no charges were ever brought forward as his DNA profiling did not match. In November 2017, Thames Valley Police announced that they were looking at the case again. This time, however, they had a DNA sample which had been tested against 200 men as well as the National DNA Database. A DNA analysis indicated that the sample belonged to a male, and whilst the family of Rita remained hopeful, they also acknowledged that the person who took her life could be dead, as his age was assumed to be between his late 60s and early 80s. In 2020, the Thames Valley Police Major Crime Review Team issued a further appeal for anyone with information to come forward. In April 2023, it was put forward that Rita may have been a victim of Bible John. As of 2025, her case still remains cold. Next, we look at the case of Mum Clare Brown, and unfortunately, there really isn't a lot of information. Clare before becoming a full-time mum, helped her parents run a cafe in Boggart Hole Clough in Blackley. She was balancing a business studies course with caring for Chloe, her daughter. She was found on the 9th of March 2008 in the bedroom of her house in Exford by her brother. After her family became concerned that they had not heard from her, Chloe was being babysat at the time that she had her life taken. Her former boyfriend, Stuart Lubbock from Gorton, stood trial for her murder, but was acquitted in November 2008. The police are re-examining the case, and Clare's family are urging anyone who can help to come forward. Her parents, Margaret and David, said that they just want justice and what is fair for Clare's children. And now we look at the cold case of Alan Wood. Alan Wood was 50 years old and was last seen leaving his favourite pub, the Willoughby Arms, to head back home on the 24th of October 2009. 3 days later, his friend visited his house and found him with his life taken. The crime was very, very violent. It was established that Alan had last been seen alive on Wednesday the 21st of October 2009, where he was confirmed by CCTV as shopping in the Morrison's supermarket. He was also confirmed as having visited his local pub. He shared a drink and had a conversation with bar staff and left at about 6:30 p.m. This was the last time he was seen alive. Alan had no criminal record and no known enemies. He was a popular, easygoing man. Police said the attack was unprovoked and the only motive seemed to be financial. His bank cards were used at cash points in the days after he had his life taken. The police went through CCTV footage and found an image of the man making the withdrawals. DNA was found at the scene of the murder. A worldwide search has been carried out, but no match has yet been found on any police DNA database. A witness also came forward to say that she had seen two men using a cash point in Sainsbury's at about 9:30 p.m. the same evening. Martin Houley, the senior investigating officer, said his team was now applying a number of new forensic methods to the evidence gathered at the crime scene. They were hopeful of a breakthrough, but police still hope members of the public will help them solve this case. A £40,000 reward has been offered by Sainsbury's, where Alan had worked since 2006. He was a very popular member of the team. This award is for information leading to the arrest and conviction of those responsible. Just 4 people have been arrested in connection with the murder over the course of the inquiry, and each has been released without further charge. Although police accept that the killer may have since left the country, they are appealing for anyone with information to finally come forward. Now we look at the cold case of Paula Hounslea, who was 37 years old. She was described as having bipolar disorder and was in poor health. Although at the time of the disappearance she was not known to have a job, it was thought she may have been employed as a bartender. She lived with her only daughter, Lois, in Liverpool. When she went missing, she was last seen wearing a grey jumper and a pink cardigan with a Madonna pendant necklace. It was thought that she had 3 small bags of clothes with her. She was last seen by her family when they dropped her off at her home after a family meal at a Chinese restaurant. The next morning, on the 22nd of August 2009, Lois claims that her mum came into her room and told her that she was going to stay with a friend named Vicky for a few days. That evening, Lois received a text message from her mum saying that she was going to stay with this friend. Vicky also received a message on her phone saying that she was going away for a few days. It was later established that Paula had booked and paid for a hotel room for that night, but never arrived to check in. The alarm was raised when it was discovered that Paula had not stayed with Vicky and had not called her parents, which was said to be very out of character. Her card was used to withdraw a total of $850 following her disappearance. Police have stated that both Paula and her daughter knew the pins for the card. During the period of her disappearance, an apparent attempt to phone Vicky had been made from Paula's phone. However, technical problems prevented the call from being connected. A total of 176 calls were made from Paula's voicemail after her disappearance. These calls came from Vicky and her parents and sisters. None of them came from her daughter, Lois. On the 5th of May 2012, Paula was found by a dog walker next to the Loop Line cycle path in Liverpool, near its junction with Blackthorn Road. The dog discovered bones on an embankment in what appeared to be an old fire pit. The walker called the police immediately. The body was identified using Paula's dental records. A weapon was also found melted in a blue plastic bag. Police were unable to establish the time that Paula had passed away, but it was seemed to have been placed between September 2011 and January 2012. Police launched a murder inquiry following the discovery of Paula and appealed to the public with the hope of making contact with anyone who saw Paula either on the day of the disappearance or after. On the 13th of June 2012, Paula's daughter Lois and her boyfriend Kevin Kavanagh, who were aged 21 and 20, were arrested on suspicion of murder. They were released on bail the next day. The house Lois shared with her mother was sealed off for forensic examination. Lois and Kevin were released without charge in August 2013 due to insufficient evidence. At the inquest, prosecutors stated there was not enough evidence to charge Lois and Kevin, as there was no realistic prospect of conviction. Lois was twice summoned to appear at her mother's inquest but failed to attend both times as she was unwell after suffering an asthma attack. She was admitted to hospital for this. Kavanagh appeared as a witness but refused to answer questions. A narrative verdict was recorded and the police have stated that the case still remains open regardless. Connie French passed away in hospital on the 13th of April 2012 following an attack and robbery on the 27th of March. She suffered severe bruising to her neck and chest during the burglary in her North Street home, in which an alarm pendant and £230 was stolen. She told detectives from her hospital bed less than 2 weeks before she passed away that a man, Mr. Portsmouth, had attempted to take her life. She was only able to mouth the answers to police and write details on a notepad because of her injuries. George Portsmouth, who was 24 years old, was acquitted of her murder and manslaughter at Preston Crown Court. Mr. Portsmouth denied in court he was the one who committed this murder and said it was a case of mistaken identity. He was originally charged with robbery and causing grievous bodily harm, a charge which changed for murder following her passing away. Detective Paul Withers said in a press statement after the verdict, "While I respect the decision of the court, naturally Connie's family is disappointed with the decision of the jury to clear the defendant on the charge of murder. We carried out a full and thorough investigation into the death of Connie French, and both Lancashire and the Crown Prosecution Service felt it was the correct decision to prosecute George Portsmouth. I am disappointed for Connie's family, who have conducted themselves with dignity from the outset. Unfortunately, her case still remains cold." And now we look at the case of Shane Fox, who was 26 years old when he was attacked while walking to his flat on the Hemingwell estate in Wellingborough in the early hours of the 1st of December 2018. Shane's brother was also injured in the attack. Northampton police have made 4 arrests in connection with the investigation and a further 2 in the summer of 2022, but charges have yet to be brought forward against anyone. In May 2019, independent charity Crime Stoppers offered £10,000 for information leading to the conviction of his killer, a reward that in June was doubled to £20,000. The force is still trying to trace a potential witness who was captured on CCTV walking past the Well Cafe near Nest Farm Crescent at about 1:55 a.m. The police are still appealing to the public again to help them catch the killer. His parents, Ian and Caroline, hope the appeal could jog someone's memory of that night and help with the investigation. But Shane Fox's case remains cold. Next, we look at the case of Amanda Gretton, who again, there is not a lot of information. She was 57 years old from Catford in South London and was discovered in Blackheath at 5 p.m. with her life taken. She had been missing since the 15th of May 2019. She had been reported missing by staff at her assisted living accommodation. Officers want to trace a man and woman captured on CCTV in a white van seen driving to and from garages. Down the road she was found on the same date. Police would also like to speak with anyone who uses the garages in that last year. 3 people have been arrested in connection with the investigation. A 40-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of Amanda's murder, as well as a 45-year-old man and 49-year-old woman. They were cleared and it's never gone to trial, so Amanda's case still remains cold. Joel Urhie lost his life in a fire at his family home in southeast London in 2018. The police believe the fire was started by burning a package being pushed through the letterbox. The fire started during the early hours of the 7th of August 2020. Joel's mother and 19-year-old sister escaped by jumping out of the first floor window. Joel was found in the upstairs bedroom he shared with his mother. CCTV images of a man wanted in connection with Joel's murder were shown on BBC One's Crime Watch. The man was seen on camera cycling with a petrol can. He then appeared to fill it with fuel at a Shell garage in Shooters Hill Road and then cycled away. Detectives said that the man was traced and was ruled out of this investigation. 2 men aged 21 and 29 were arrested 4 days after the fire on suspicion of murder, attempted murder and arson with the intent to endanger life, but they were released with no further action in November 2019, and his case still remains cold. Now we look at the case of Annalise Johnstone. On May 9th, 2018, at around lunchtime, she left her home for a road trip with her brother, Jordan, and his partner, Angela Newlands. The pair were forced to leave their home a month earlier due to flooding. At around 2 p.m, CCTV shows the girlfriend and Annalise stopping off at Sainsbury's in Stewarton. Shows Annalise visiting the Alpine store before dropping off her dog Sadie at her friend Donna Payton's house. She tells Miss Payton she has to go and do something with her brother, but that she will be back in an hour. Donna, her friend, notices that Annalise has clearly had been harming herself. She later said at the trial her friend was anxious to return home from an earlier trip with her brother and the girlfriend. Later that day, Annalise messaged Donna writing, "I'm sorry, he's taken ages," but assures her she will get back to collect Sadie, her dog. In the evening, Jordan and Angela and Annalise drive to Miss Newland's parents' home. At 11:45 p.m, the trio, along with Angela's 4 children, leave the house to get food in a Ford Galaxy. Just after 12 o'clock, the 7-seater vehicle was spotted at the BP garage in Dundee before arriving at a McDonald's drive-thru. It travelled on past a roundabout. Angela says she was dropped off at a bus stop and walked with her kids to her mum and dad's home. During the investigation, it was established her and her children could have made this walk without it being captured by cameras. Between 1:30 a.m. and 2 a.m, CCTV from a private address shows the Ford Galaxy arriving at Maggie's War Monument. At the trial, it was agreed Annalise lost her life between this time period. Her brother Jordan told the court he found his sister lying face down at the memorial. He took his t-shirt to try and stop the blood before she passed away in his arms. He told a newspaper, "I was telling her I loved her and begging my mammy to look after her. My mum passed away. I was begging my mum, please just look after her." At 1:45 a.m, the Ford Galaxy leaves the monument but returns a minute later. Again, the car arrives back at Maggie's War at 2:23 a.m. and departs after 15 minutes later for the final time. The next morning, a hotel worker spots burning clothes at the side of the road. He also said there was a weapon that was buried there. Jordan had already reported his sister missing. They searched Annalise's home. There was signs of a disturbance, but nobody is home. They then traced Jordan's address to Angela's parents' house. The police then informed Jordan that his sister had been found with her life taken. A detective said he was very upset and emotional. He was crying and he hit his head off the table a couple of times. Because of the circumstances and evidence found, Jordan and Angela were arrested for the murder. Jordan and his former partner, Angela Newlands, went on trial for the murder, but they were both acquitted. Newlands was cleared after a judge at the High Court ruled there was insufficient evidence to convict her of the crime, and Jordan, who admitted carrying Annalise's body for 2 miles and dumping her by a roadside, was also cleared of murder after the jury returned a not proven verdict. The case has remained unsolved since. In 2021, her father Gordon said he had given up hope of justice for his daughter's killer. He said, "If my daughter had come from a posh background, the police would be going out of their way to keep this investigation running, but because she was a traveller, they've moved on. It's like they just want to brush things under the carpet and get rid of it." Her case remains cold. And that concludes our video today. Of course, like I said in the intro, if you have any information, all the details for Crime Stoppers are in the description. As always, thanks so much for watching, and until next time.